This, Cynthia slapped the photo down on the folding table, is a violation of everything our community stands for. You could have heard a pin drop in that fluorescent-lit clubhouse. Every pair of eyes snapped to the glossy print of Mr. Keller's garage door, cracked open just enough to reveal chaos. Rusty bikes dangling like skeletons, a toppled lawnmower, boxes marked Christmas 2001 stacked to the ceiling. Cynthia held it up like she was unveiling a murder weapon. My stomach churned with secondhand embarrassment because we all knew where this was headed. She wasn't just going after the clutter, she was going for blood. That's the thing about HOA meetings. You think you're safe behind the free coffee urn and the plate of stale sugar cookies, but then someone like Cynthia turns suburban life into a courtroom drama. And tonight, the trial was about a garage. Not her garage, not even the community pool shed. No, she'd set her sights on poor, retired Mr. Keller, a man who hadn't updated his license plate sticker in 2 years, and now, apparently, hadn't updated his storage habits since Clinton was in office. Cynthia cleared her throat, savoring the silence like a seasoned prosecutor. "Our bylaws clearly state," she read, tapping her manicured nail against a highlighted page, "that garages are to be used for the storage of vehicles. Vehicles, not hoarded trash, not broken appliances, vehicles." Someone coughed into their hand. Another neighbor shifted in their chair, the metal legs scraping across the linoleum. I caught Linda's eye. She lived across from Keller, and she mouthed, "Here we go again." I'd watched Cynthia rise to power in this HOA like a suburban monarch. At first, it was parking disputes, then lawn height measurements, then Christmas light deadlines. Now, she was escalating to garage interiors, as if the clutter inside someone's 4 walls could poison the property values of an entire cul-de-sac. And, to prove her point, she'd summoned the one man scarier than herself, the HOA lawyer, Mr. Grayson. The room stiffened when his name was mentioned. Grayson didn't live here, didn't know our block from a hole in the ground, but he came with a reputation letters that dripped legal jargon, threats of liens, fees that piled higher than a stack of Keller's boxes. Cynthia thrived on the power he represented. I raised a hand, trying to inject some sanity. "With all due respect, Cynthia, is this really worth dragging a neighbor into legal trouble? It's just a garage." Her head whipped toward me like an owl spotting prey. "Just a garage," she hissed. "When guests drive through this neighborhood, what do they see? They see standards, they see pride, and then they see that." She jabbed the photo again. "Most guests don't tour garages," I muttered, earning a few stifled laughs from the back row. Cynthia ignored the ripple of amusement. "This is about order, about protecting what we've built." Her voice dropped, dramatic. "If we allow one man to hoard, we all suffer." That was her gift, taking something petty and blowing it up until it sounded like national security. By the time she was done, you'd half expect Keller's garage to collapse and swallow the block whole. The vote wasn't even close. By a show of hands, the board approved sending Keller an official violation letter drafted by Grayson himself. The decision landed like a gavel strike, final and cold. After the meeting, I lingered in the parking lot. The air smelled of damp leaves and my breath curled in the October chill. Cynthia was holding court by her SUV, recapping her victory with a cluster of allies. "You have to draw the line somewhere," she was saying. "If we let garages slide, next thing you know, people will start keeping chickens." I shook my head. This wasn't about chickens. This was about control. And Cynthia had just declared war over a garage filled with nothing more sinister than memories and mess. The letter went out the next morning. White envelope, official letterhead, the works. I saw Keller retrieve it from his mailbox in slippers, squinting through his bifocals. He stood there in the driveway, opening it with shaky hands. His face fell as he read. He looked around the street, maybe wondering which of us had betrayed him. I felt a pang of guilt, even though my vote had been against it. That evening, a new rumor slithered through the block. Keller might be forced to clean out or face legal action. Some said fines, others whispered foreclosure. None of us really knew where Cynthia planned to push it, but we knew she wouldn't stop at one letter. Inside his garage, the light flicked on. From my kitchen window, I could see him moving boxes, dust rising in the glow. It wasn't just junk he was shifting, it was decades of his life, reduced to evidence in Cynthia's crusade. And as I watched, something occurred to me. Cynthia thought she'd trapped him, but she didn't see the trap she'd set for herself. By dragging in lawyers, by making this her hill to die on, she was about to put the entire HOA on trial. The sound of Keller's garage door groaning shut echoed down the street, heavy and final. I had the strangest feeling that this wasn't the end of the story, it was only the opening statement. The papers slid across the desk with a whisper. Not a house deed, not a mortgage refinance. No, these were the ownership papers for the exact suite of beige, carpet-stained offices where Cynthia's beloved HOA lawyer operated. The agent smiled, that plastic grin of someone who'd sold one too many fixer-uppers. Once you sign, the place is yours. I didn't hesitate. The pen felt heavy, final, almost theatrical as it scrawled across the dotted line. Somewhere, Cynthia was sharpening her claws, prepping her next bylaw battle royale, and she had no idea the ground beneath her throne had already been pulled out. That's the thing about people like Cynthia, they play loud, they play proud, but they never look down to see who's quietly stacking the dominoes. She thought she was building momentum, her binder of violations growing thicker by the week. Meanwhile, I was signing away her lawyer's very roof. Let's rewind, because the trap didn't spring overnight. 2 weeks earlier, the neighborhood had been choking on violation letters. They came crisp and condescending, stamped with Grayson's letterhead, bold black font, legal threats wrapped in polite phrasing. Keller's garage became Exhibit A, but once Cynthia smelled blood, she moved on to others. A faded fence post here, a trampoline visible from the street there. Even Linda's flower beds weren't safe. Apparently tulips planted too close to the sidewalk were a scandal worth $50 a day in fines. The clubhouse meetings turned into theater. Cynthia would stand at the head of the table like a suburban general, Grayson's letters stacked beside her like ammunition. "We have to maintain standards," she'd repeat, as if the entire neighborhood was one rogue garage sale away from collapse. I'd sit there, nodding politely, but my mind was elsewhere. See, every letter, every smug smile, every threat traced back to one place. Suite 204 of a drab brick building off Maple Avenue. Grayson's office. I'd been there once, years ago, when a neighbor fought a noise complaint. The place smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet cleaner, the kind of office where dreams went to die. But location wasn't the point. Ownership was. So I started asking questions. Who owned the suite? Were they looking to sell? Turns out, yes. The owner had passed away, and the family didn't care to keep a strip mall office building in their portfolio. The price wasn't outrageous. In fact, it was doable, especially when fueled by the delicious thought of watching Cynthia's jaw drop. Now, here I was, papers signed, keys promised within the week. Back in the neighborhood, Cynthia was in rare form. She'd taken to parading Keller's garage photo at every meeting, as if the image alone was evidence of moral decay. "We will not back down," she declared one Tuesday evening, slapping Grayson's latest invoice onto the table. "The lawyer will be pursuing further action." I nearly choked on my complimentary styrofoam cup of coffee. The lawyer, Cynthia, the one whose office I now own? Please, do continue. Linda leaned toward me, whispering, "She's losing it." "She's overplaying her hand," I whispered back. And she was. Because the more she relied on Grayson, the deeper she tied her fate to his office, and I held that leash now. The letters kept coming, but something shifted for me. Each new envelope wasn't a threat anymore. It was entertainment. I'd picture Grayson drafting them at a desk soon to be boxed up and carried out by movers I could hire. Cynthia wielded those papers like holy scripture, and I knew the entire temple was built on land I now owned. The turning point came when Keller himself shuffled into the clubhouse, letter in hand. His voice trembled, but it carried. "I've lived here 30 years. 30 years, and not once have I been treated like a criminal for keeping my own things in my own garage." The room fell silent. Cynthia's face tightened, but she pressed on. "This isn't personal, Mr. Keller. It's about community standards." Keller looked around the room, his eyes landing on me for just a moment. I saw it, the quiet plea, the exhaustion. And that's when I decided. I wasn't just going to own Grayson's office, I was going to make an example of Cynthia's obsession. The papers were finalized the next morning. A ring of new keys jingled in my pocket, cold and heavy as I stood outside Suite 204. The blinds were drawn, the door bland and unassuming. From inside I could hear the faint hum of a copier spitting out the very letters Cynthia would soon wave around like victory flags. I unlocked the door, not yet to barge in, but just to feel the power of it. The carpet reeked of the same stale air freshener I remembered. On the wall hung a framed diploma, slightly crooked. The mighty law office reduced to a strip mall cubicle farm, and it was mine. The first box I set down in the empty corner wasn't for supplies. It was symbolic. My marker in the sand. Back in the neighborhood, Cynthia was still crowing. "We have legal backing. We have authority. No one defies this board." And that's when I smiled to myself. Because what Cynthia didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that her legal backing was about to be evicted by me. The clock was ticking. The letters would keep coming, sure, but soon the return address on every envelope would belong to me. And when that day came, Cynthia's reign wouldn't just crack, it would collapse. "Why are there movers in my lawyer's office?" Cynthia shrieked, her binder of bylaws clattering against a desk already halfway dismantled. The words cracked through the stale air like a whip. She stood frozen, mascara smudging under the flicker of fluorescent lights, as men in matching polo shirts lifted file boxes marked property of Suite 204 and carted them toward the door. A diploma was already off the wall, a potted plant stuffed awkwardly into cardboard, even the secretary's desk emptied to nothing but dust rings. Cynthia looked less like a president and more like someone who'd walked in on her own funeral. It was glorious. See, up until that moment, she'd been untouchable. She strutted through HOA meetings waving Grayson's letters as if they were law carved in stone. Violation. Fine. Lenine. Each word landed like a hammer, and the neighbors, tired, quiet, afraid of trouble, mostly obeyed. But here, in this office, her hammer had no handle. Her legal muscle was being wheeled out one dolly at a time. Let me rewind, though, because the explosion only works when you know how much dynamite's been stacked. The week before, Cynthia doubled down on her crusade. The violation letters escalated from Keller's garage to include a laundry list of infractions: an improperly stored garden hose, a flagpole not conforming to height standards. Even a child's chalk drawings on the sidewalk somehow made it into her binder of evidence. She announced in a meeting that Grayson would be filing the first round of liens within the month. Neighbors exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared push back. Not publicly. Not while Cynthia had her lawyer. Meanwhile, I had my keys. It was almost comical. The very night she threatened half the neighborhood with legal ruin, I walked into Suite 204 with a locksmith and a camera crew from the moving company. The office was mine, fair and square, purchased and recorded at the county courthouse. Grayson had no lease renewal, no long-term agreement. He was month to month, the weakest kind of tenancy. All it took was a politely worded notice to vacate and a call to movers. I kept it quiet. Timing was everything. If Cynthia knew too early, she'd spin the story, deflect the blame. No, I needed the reveal to land when her confidence was at its peak. That morning, she marched into Grayson's office like she always did. Binder under her arm, pearls tight around her neck, ready to dictate her next suburban conquest. Except instead of Grayson's secretary offering coffee, she was met with the scrape of packing tape and the thud of filing cabinets being wheeled onto dollies. "What is happening?" she demanded. One of the movers glanced at her like she was just another obstacle in the hallway. "Office is closing, ma'am." "Closing?" Cynthia's voice cracked. No. This is the law office of Mr. Grayson. This office represents the Willow Creek HOA. The mover shrugged. "Not anymore." She spun toward Grayson's desk only to find him standing awkwardly by the window, jacket already off the hook, resignation heavy in his shoulders. They sold the office," he muttered, not meeting her eyes. "I didn't renew the lease." "You what?" Her voice carried, shrill enough that heads poked out from neighboring suites. For the first time, Cynthia looked small. "And that's when I walked in." I couldn't resist. The smell of dust and stale coffee hit me, but all I saw was Cynthia, red-faced and flustered, as movers carried out the very boxes of letters she'd used to torment the neighborhood. "Morning," I said casually, jangling the new keys in my hand. "I see you've met the movers." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "You?" "Yes," I smiled. "I own the office now, and Grayson, well, he doesn't practice law here anymore." For once, Cynthia had no words. No bylaws to quote, no legal jargon to hide behind. Just stunned silence. The fallout was instant. Word spread faster than crabgrass in July. By sundown, half the neighborhood knew that Cynthia's mighty lawyer had been evicted, his office gutted, his influence severed at the roots. Neighbors who once ducked their heads at her glare now laughed behind closed doors. A few even stopped me on the sidewalk to whisper, "Was it you? Did you do this?" I never answered outright, but the grin on my face was answer enough. That evening, the HOA held its regularly scheduled meeting. Cynthia tried to proceed as usual, binder snapping open like a weapon, but the difference was palpable. No letters, no lawyer, no backing. Just hollow threats echoing in a half-empty clubhouse. When she announced, "The board will be pursuing liens," Linda leaned forward with a smirk. "With what lawyer, Cynthia? The one you don't have?" A ripple of laughter spread across the room. The walls themselves seemed to lean in, hungry for her humiliation. Cynthia slammed her binder shut, her face blotchy, her grip trembling. For the first time, she had no comeback. Across the street, Keller's garage light glowed defiantly. The clutter still intact, boxes stacked as proudly as ever. He hadn't moved a single item, and now he didn't have to. But even as I savored the victory, I knew Cynthia wasn't finished. She was too proud, too angry to let this be her end. And, sure enough, as the meeting adjourned and neighbors drifted out into the cool night, I caught her muttering under her breath, "This isn't over." Her binder clutched tight, her heels clicking against the tile, she stormed off into the shadows. And something in her stride told me she was already plotting her next move.